if you guys do want a copy of this, we can get this to you afterwards, but I'll push it over to you, JC. Thanks again for joining us.
Absolutely. Very good. So we obviously, in this type of market, when we have the some of the lowest inventories that we've ever had as far as availability, that we're going to run into multiple offer situations. That's nothing new. But as we look at and review how we handle multiple offers, it's very important because the way from when we're representing buyers and sellers, it's very important as far as the outcome and the actual value that we bring as real estate license holders to these clients in our ability to advise them properly through the multiple offer scenario and platform. Now, we again, if y'all, it's not necessary that you have it in front of you, but if you did receive a copy of some of the materials for the class, you can follow along. But we're going to start off looking at some question and answers that you can find on our Texas Realtors website. And one of these is a question that says, a seller received 2 offers about the same time. The seller wants to counter both to be efficient. Should they do that? That would be an answer of absolutely not. Because again, if you counter 2 offers, what could happen? They could actually be accepted and delivered back, and then you would have 2 valid contracts, 2 enforceable contracts. Now, this, you don't have to be a litigation expert to remember this little litigation formula. If you have 1 property and 2 enforceable contracts, that's always going to equal at least 1 lawsuit. You can just remember that. And so we don't want to do that. So again, from a standpoint, if we counter an offer as a seller and we cannot negotiate that, we want to withdraw from negotiations, and then we can start working the other contract by countering it, or the other offer by countering it from that standpoint. You know, in a situation of going to Vegas and getting on a hot streak and winning a lot of money, that's not the kind of odds that I have. If I were a seller and counter 2 offers, they both would do the 1 in a million. They both come back executed and enforceable. So those are kind of the negative type great odds that you don't want to have to deal with. When we're having scenarios too, this can be a common situation is where a buyer, we can't find anything, we finally find something that's maybe not exactly what we wanted, but the best thing on the market at the time. We negotiate a contract out, or we're in negotiations, in the middle of negotiations, but don't have a deal put together yet. And lo and behold, on the MLS pops up a property better suited for us as a buyer. And so if we've already submitted an offer, or we're in the middle of several counter offers, but our counter offer is out to the sellers, can we withdraw? And the answer is yes, until we have acceptance and delivery, both of those items. Either a buyer or seller can withdraw an offer or counter offer from that standpoint. And you simply do that by communicating that. Now, in the Q&A that's on the Texas Realtors website, it indicates you should make a phone call and then follow up with an email. As a practice tip, I would tell you to do the opposite, because it's important not only that you withdraw, but when you withdraw. Because you can withdraw an offer or counter offer at any time prior to acceptance and delivery. And so it matters when you do this. And so you want to document this. And so I would do that in the form of an email so that it is clear when that occurred. Now, it could be a situation where you submit a withdrawal via email, and you're contacted by the other agent on the other side, and they indicate it's too late for you to withdraw because my clients have already accepted in writing. Is that true? The answer is no, because in order for there to be an enforceable contract, it's not only important that their clients accepted without making any further changes in writing, but they also have to communicate that back is to constitute delivery. And that can be done. It can be done verbally. It's always better to have an evidence trail, and considering what I do for a living, and also for you being in a fiduciary duty to be able to maintain records for your clients. And so you, again, delivery is important. You have to let the other side know that your clients have accepted unequivocally, without changes, the offer, and that would constitute delivery from that standpoint. You can do that by sending the actual document or just an email communication to that effect. Either one will work, but you have to have offer, acceptance, and delivery to get to an enforceable contract. But before delivery occurs, the other party can withdraw at any time from that standpoint. And you need to do that. It needs to be done. Again, it doesn't have to be done in writing per law, but again, it gives a good evidence trail. And if we use email, we automatically have built in a time and date stamp, which can be very important in looking at these withdrawals. Here's a question that comes up, whether in regards to legality and ethics. You have a buyer. They have had a hard time negotiating a contract. They made a few offers. They have not gotten the properties. They now have two different properties they are interested in. Even though they only intend to purchase one property, can they make offers on both properties if they're paying an option fee for both properties? And because in fact, what could happen is both sellers could accept the offers and they would have two contracts, but the buyer never has any intention of buying more than one property. Is that one legal? And two, is it ethical? And from a legal perspective, it is absolutely legal, because the buyer has paid for the right to terminate the contract during the option period. Our Texas Association of Realtors has indicated that from our perspective, that it is also ethical for the same reason, that because the option period and the consideration for that option period, the option fee, is part of the contract, then it is also ethical for this situation to make offers on more than one property, even though the buyer is most likely intending to only purchase one property. And so that comes up as a question from time to time. Now, something very important when we're serving as a listing agent is to discuss before this comes up. This is some of our, maybe what you would call listing administration. Before the multiple offers comes in, we need to discuss with our clients how we're going to handle multiple offers. Now, many times we take an approach, and it may likely produce the best results. It's kind of the highest and best. If we have 5 offers come in, let's say, and again, we tell each of the 5 buyer's agents, we have multiple offers, and we create this big showdown like an old Western movie. And so all 5 of you need to know there are multiple offers, and we need your highest and best offer by noon tomorrow. We're having a showdown at noon tomorrow, and we're going to pick the best one. Now, that might be an extremely common approach. There's a good argument it creates the highest results, but it is not the only way to handle multiple offers. And it's also that approach, along with many times achieving the highest results, also has the highest risk. And when I say risk, I'm talking about one potential outcome, very negative outcome. If you tell 5 buyer agents that there are multiple offers and we're going to take highest and best at noon tomorrow, what could potentially happen? All 5 buyers withdraw from negotiations because they don't want to be in that competitive situation. Now, if you have discussed this approach and it had this approach approved by your seller, then it's still going to be an unpleasant conversation, but it's going to be one that, again, it was part of the plan that was decided upon by the client, the seller. However, if this is just your plan, you have not discussed this plan with your seller, this is just the way that you normally handle multiple offers, again, it's going to be a very different conversation with your seller. Do you still have, even though there's really, if you've been told by all 5 buyer's agents that their clients are withdrawing from negotiations, there's really nothing to be done, do you still have to tell your seller client about what happened? The answer is absolutely yes, from a standpoint. But after you explain this to your client, they're going to be wanting to get off the phone with you because they need to make another phone call. And that phone call is going to be made to their legal counsel because they're going to talk about suing you because of the damage that you harmed. Because if you've done this as a faux principal, taking their place instead of and letting them make the decisions about this, you open yourself up for an extreme amount of liability. And so the general approach is to how you handle multiple offers needs to be discussed and needs to be decided upon by the client before the multiple offer situation occurs. Because if we look at, there's 2 other distinct approaches besides this highest and best. One, if you have 5 offers come in, one thing that your client could do is evaluate the 5 offers and pick one and execute the offer and deliver it and create a contract. Now, there's a good argument that that could be leaving money on the table by not creating a competitive situation by doing highest and best, or at least countering that one offer. But by the same token, a seller who has very, very low risk tolerance, this might be the preferred method that they take, and it's their decision. Also, there's a medium risk alternative. If we have 5 offers come in, we can pick the one that looks best at the initial offering, and then we can counter that from that situation and see if we can negotiate even more favorable terms by the one that looked best on the initial offer. Now, again, there are some downfalls to that. One, the other 4 offerees could grow impatient and withdraw from negotiations, or just because the initial offer was best by one offeree, it doesn't mean that that's the most the other offerees or the other offerees wouldn't offer even better in a counter offer situation. We don't know that. But again, that is a mid-risk alternative from that standpoint. And so we want to make sure our clients, our seller clients, know that if we get 5 offers in, or 3 offers in, or 15 offers in, that there are 3 distinct approaches. We can notify all the offerees that there are multiple offers and give a timeline to give their highest and best offer. In the alternative, we can pick the offer that looks best to us in the initial offers and try to counter that to get even more favorable terms. And if that doesn't work out, we can go to the next one and so forth, as long as the offerees are willing to maintain in negotiations. And then the third one is we have multiple offers. We simply evaluate the offers and then we execute the one that we think is the most favorable to the terms we're looking for. And again, that's the lowest risk. We may be leaving money on the table. However, for a low risk tolerance seller client, that might be the best alternative because we can go under contract and move forward with that scenario. Now, again, from a standpoint, we look at some of the information we are to share and we are not to share when it comes to multiple offers. And this can get confusing. One thing is, in a scenario, it is the client's decision, the seller client's decision, whether to disclose if there are multiple offers or not from a standpoint. It is their decision, not anything we have going on, but their decision from that standpoint of whether to disclose multiple offers. And so from a standpoint, if we look at this, again, is that we look at in our standards of practice 1.15, when a realtor is authorized to disclose their multiple offers, we can do so as far as to the buyer's agents or the cooperating brokers in that situation from that standpoint. We also look to if your brokerage utilizes the Texas Realtor listing agreement, then in under paragraph 11D, enumeration number 8, the seller actually provides permission to disclose multiple offers from that standpoint. And this reads in full, in response to inquiries from prospective buyers and other brokers, disclose whether the seller is considering more than one offer, provided that broker will not disclose the terms of any competing offer unless specifically instructed by the seller. Now, can the seller, it begs the question, so this is in this scenario. Now, this can be modified. The seller could choose not to disclose the presence of multiple offers. And so if you were the listing agent and the seller had prohibited you from disclosing multiple offers, maybe because they think that the buyers might have read on the internet they should be in a competitive situation, in a bidding war. And so they don't want the buyers to know about this until they're ready for them to know. And so they have withheld their consent for you to share if there are multiple offers. If buyer's agent number 2 offer, when they submit the offer, if they ask you, are there multiple offers, what would you say? Would you say no? No, absolutely, because that's not true. And you should not be in a scenario where you're making false statements or actually simply lying from that standpoint. But what you would have to say is that my seller has not given me consent to communicate whether there are multiple offers or not. That is the appropriate response from that situation. Now, in the standard Texas Realtor listing agreement, it withholds consent to share terms. If the seller actually wanted to share the terms of the other offers, can they do so? Many people say, oh no, that offers are confidential information and a seller can't share that. That is absolutely wrong. And so offers are not confidential unless there is a non-disclosure or confidentiality agreement in place between the buyer, potential buyer, and the seller prior to the offer being made, which is hardly ever done. Then offers are not confidential at all. And people still say, what do you mean, JC? What do you mean they're not confidential at all? Like if a seller received 5 offers, they could scan those and put them on Facebook if they wanted to, with the names, dollar amounts, everything. And so there's nothing confidential about an offer. Now, in fact, it is required for buyer's agents to make their buyers aware in writing that their offers are not confidential before a buyer submits an offer. That is required of us as real estate license holders. Now, has everyone been doing that, I ask? Some of y'all say, I have no idea what you're talking about, JC. The good news is that your trade association, the Texas Realtors, has been taking care of you in this point, even if you did not know it, because in the standard buyer's representation agreement that's offered by Texas Realtors, in paragraph 10 under confidential information, section B, it states, unless otherwise agreed or required by law, a seller or the seller's agent is not obliged to keep the existence of an offer or its terms confidential. If a listing agent receives multiple offers, the listing agent is obliged to treat the competing buyers fairly. Okay, so if a seller had a plan to attack multiple offers and gave consent, then the listing agent could provide the terms of the offers. Now, how do you keep this second sentence though? How do you make it fair to all the offerees, all the potential buyers? And that simply goes about whatever term you share, you share all the terms. For instance, if you were going to share sales price, you would share all the different sales prices with all the different offerees or potential buyers. And so that was what keeps it fair. Now, you couldn't tell if one of the buyer representatives was a friend of yours and they want to know what the highest offer was, could you share what the highest sales price only to that one buyer's representative? Absolutely not. That's unethical, both from a standpoint of unethical to the other potential buyers and their representatives, but it's also unethical to your client because such favoritism could change the balance of what could be negotiated in a true, fair, and competitive situation. And so it violates ethical code in one area and ethical code and fiduciary duty in the other area. And so it's a very, very important scenario. But this is a very common misconception that offers are confidential. They are not, and we are to tell our buyer clients that our offers are not confidential from that standpoint. But we also have to make note in our, if we're using that standard listing agreement, that consent is given in that listing agreement by the seller to us as a listing agent, the listing brokerage, that we can share that the presence of multiple offers, but we are not allowed to share without further consent the terms of those offers with the other offerees from that standpoint. And so that is a important piece. I've included in the packet, whether you have it available to you now or you get it later, there is an article, it's a good one, about how to handle multiple offers. Again, it goes through this scenario that we can accept one offer and ignore the others. We can reject all offers and do this highest and best, this showdown at high noon, so to speak. Or we can be in a scenario where we counter one offer and see if we can negotiate that while the others are in a scenario of a situation where we're putting them on the sideline and trying to negotiate a contract with what we feel will be the highest and best from that standpoint. Now, there's not a TREC form to help us with any of this, and there's only one Texas Realtor form. And the Texas Realtor form that can provide some assistance is the seller's invitation to buyer to submit a new offer. Now, this form is obviously not required for required use, but it has some very, very good elements. The one element it has in the very first section it has, which is just one sentence, it indicates that the seller does not accept the above reference offer you submitted. And so it has a reference to the parties and the property above, but it does not accept. So this is a rejection. So it makes it very clear that this very upfront, this is a rejection. It also offers in section 2, which you do not have to use section 2, but it's there for this purpose. It says you are invited to submit another offer which seller may more favorably consider if. And this allows you to put terms, different terms in there. Like if we wanted to see only offers above $400,000, or that we needed a seller temporary lease of no less than 10 days, or we were looking for a closing time frame of no less than 30 days, those type of things. Now there, again, this is for voluntary use, and it should be discussed with your seller, because some people will argue this helps shape the offers or counter offers that come in. It helps shape these counter offers. But then in the scenario or the second round of offers is probably a better way to depict that. And some say that by putting parameters there that you could limit what the second round of offers could look like. And so it's just a philosophy about how to negotiate these multiple offers. but it's here and could be useful, and you should explain it to your seller and see what their thoughts, and so they can make a decision on how they want you to handle that. The third section in this is, again, reiterating an important point, because if you're simply doing this in the email and it's not clear, if you leave any ambiguity around this, it could create problems. It says in this seller's invitation to buyer to submit a new offer, the third section said this communication invitation is not a counteroffer. The property remains on the market. Seller may consider other offers and accept another offer. So it's simply making it clear that their original offer is rejected. And even though they may indicate what may be more favorably considered by the seller, this is not a counteroffer, and they can consider any other offer that they want to. And so this simply keeps the potential buyers, the offerees, informed of what is meant by this form coming back. And so I think it's a good form to use if we're going the highest and best route from that standpoint, or even if we're countering a single offer from that, and we're not actually going to counter with countering terms from this. This is a rejection, and so we can get them to go ahead and with a single potential buyer kind of do, we want to see your highest and best instead of directly countering. It can be used for that purpose too, from that standpoint. And so I think that that is a good situation as we look at this this form and consider utilizing this form. Another article I included in the materials, if you have it in front of you or if you're going to look at it later, is a one, and it's got a kind of interesting title. It says "None of Your Beeswax," and this is a scenario that played out. It's based on a real TREC complaint that went in front of the commissioners from a standpoint on appeal. And in this, we had the listing agent had two offers come in, and the second buyer representative number two, let's say, when they submitted their offer, they asked if the sellers were considering any other offers. In a situation from a standpoint is that in this, they ask if they're, again, considering any offers, to which this listing agent responded, "That's none of your business." And so they were the buyer's agent was kind of taken aback by that. And from a standpoint, they talked to their buyer about that. And because of the ambiguity around the existence of other offers, they decided to withdraw. So happened later on, the seller actually ran into the buyer agent number two, and they asked them about their submission of an offer and their withdrawal. And they asked if their client would have been in a situation, would they have raised their initial offer any? To which buyer agent number two said yes, they very much wanted the property and would have raised their offer. And so based on this and not having the opportunity to have a competitive situation that may have raised both offers, and this potential buyer number two may even been the winning offer, if you will, the seller filed a TREC complaint because the listing agent had never talked to them about the different approaches from a standpoint. Again, they had a situation that said, here are two offers. This one's better. This is the one you need to sign. That's the only conversation that ever occurred, even though that there were other ways to handle this multiple offer situation. So reason it's very important that we have these discussions with our sellers prior to even the existence of multiple offers, because we want them to think about, understand, ask questions, and make a decision about how to handle multiple offers, because it is their decision. Upon appeal to the commissioners, this realtor before the commissioners indicated to them that he is not required to run any type of auction in order to try to increase the offers more favorable to his client. He's not responsible for having to run an auction. To which the commissioner said, that is the decision of your client. And so if your client wants to take this highest and best auction, if you will, want to categorize it as such, approach, that is what you are to do. And they actually, and he received a reprimand and a fine and some other punishment there because of this misunderstanding that it was his decision as a listing agent to handle multiple offers the way he wanted to, instead of how his client wanted to, and he had failed to even explain there were multiple ways to handle the transaction from that standpoint. And so again, I think that's a good illustration of the very need that we have to understand. There are three broad ways to handle multiple offer situations. We need to know what they are, what the pros and cons of these are, kind of the risk levels that they are, and be ready, willing, and able to explain these to our clients from that standpoint, our seller clients from this. And as we look at in representing buyers, we need to know, should we ask as a buyer's agent if there are multiple offers? Absolutely. Should we ask what the terms of the other offers are? Absolutely. Now, the seller is not required to disclose either one of those pieces of information. But as buyer's agents, we're always going to ask because we're trying to get our clients in the best situation that they can so that they can make decisions along those lines. Now, I've been doing a lot of talking, straight talking, because of the Zoom format. I'm going to open it up some questions, and then we get some questions answered, and then I'll be glad to do a little conclusion, and then I'll wrap us up. Greg, do we have any questions thus far?
We've got a couple. I'm scrolling back up. Let's see. We have one agent that says, we lost a multiple offer deal yesterday and the listing agent never called for highest and best. I had no idea there wouldn't be an opportunity to modify our terms. I understand the verbiage implications, but I wish the agent would have just told me they're not going to negotiate. Please be sure they're submitting their best offer.
Right, and that's one of those situations that seller and their listing agent are not, and they're certainly not obligated to do highest and best. And so we have to be proactive as buyer's agents. And that's, again, we ask those questions. Are there multiple offers? Again, from a standpoint, are you going to be able to tell us what the terms of those offers are? And just see what they say. And the third question, and this goes to this situation exactly, how is your seller going to handle multiple offers? Are you going to call for highest and best from a standpoint? Are they going to just review what's been submitted? What is the plan? Because you're trying to extract as much information out of the listing agent as possible.
Right. And with Cheryl said about that entire talk that you did, she said, thank you. This is helpful for what you just said. Thank you. Next question is confidentiality not in the representation agreement.
From a and as far as it's in the buyer's representation agreement. As far as it's a disclosure, it's a required disclosure from us as real estate license holders to the clients, talking about the fact that their offers are in fact not confidential. The only way we can be in a situation of keeping them confidential is if we enter into a non-disclosure or confidentiality agreement with the seller in advance of submitting the offer.
Okay. Let's see. The next question is from Richard Nouse. If the client doesn't want to divulge if there's multiple offers, do you have to disclose if there are not? Are there multiple offers? No.
Yeah, if the seller does not want to disclose multiple offers, again, from a standpoint, there are two things to think about. One, if you're using that standard Texas Realtor listing agreement, it probably needs to be modified to that effect. And also, two, your response is that your client withheld consent for you to disclose. You don't say no, and you certainly can't say yes from a standpoint, and you say simply, I cannot disclose that.
I like that. Let's see. Next is, do you think it's a good practice to use this form anytime a counter is being made, not just in multiple offer situations?
The only reason you would use it in a situation if you and your client agreed that, as opposed to exactly counting terms, like, okay, the sales price is they offered $425 and we're going to counter with $430. If we just wanted to see how, maybe we had the idea, if we don't do an exact counter, let's just see how high they would go from that standpoint. You might use it then, but I think probably better when we're talking about a unilateral negotiation to simply come up with terms that are acceptable to your seller and counter with those terms. But again, it's something that could be discussed with your seller. Let them make the decision. Say we could, as opposed to countering with exact terms, we could counter with this form, saying that we would think about these things more favorably and see kind of what they come back with, because they may outbid our expectations. And also, it does not have us in a situation of, again, defining exactly what we would accept or not.
Okay, thank you. All right, next, Jason Gracie asks, is there an ethical or legal way to offer up an escalation clause of sorts?
Escalation clause on their face are not illegal. Our association has determined that they are unethical. Even though they're not illegal, so to speak, from a standpoint, they're not prohibited by law, is that it's very, very easy to get a consumer in a situation where it's an ambiguity around how the escalation clause works from that standpoint. Because when you start talking about that you're going to give X amount of dollars above any other offers, then, this is the attorney in me, which drives everybody crazy. It's like, I have questions like, what constitutes an offer? Is it a verbal offer? Is it a written offer? Can it be from your cousin? Do you have to provide evidence of that? Do the people have to be qualified for it to be considered an actual offer? All these things come into play. And so it's very, very, it's a very dangerous as a consumer harm. And so I would, kind of almost categorically recommend against it. If you're going to use an escalation clause, you're going to need to reach out to legal counsel representing your client to draft an escalation clause of that type.
Okay, thank you. Next question is, would it be all right to ask the listing agent if the seller will allow disclosure of terms? Most agents are not willing.
Yeah, it's fine to ask from a standpoint. They can always tell you no, but as the buyer's agent, you're like a private investigator, like on a TV movie. From a standpoint, you want as much information as you can. And so you're always going to ask all the questions you can, so your client has the most informed ability to negotiate and traverse a multiple offer situation.
Okay. Next question is it ethical for a listing agent to say there are multiple offers when there aren't, as a way to push for higher offers to come in?
No, it is not. It's absolutely unethical from a standpoint, and it creates a misrepresentation.
Yep. She further says, I have been on the buy side where I feel this is the case. So
there's no doubt, and it's again, from a standpoint that it goes against honesty, fairness. It violates both our ethical code as a trade industry. It also violates the TREC rules in the Real Estate License Act.
Gotcha. Okay. When asked, do you have any other offers? My general response is we've had strong interest, nothing in writing as of yet. I just want to confirm that this is safe, low risk response. And indeed, there isn't anything in writing.
I think I mean I think that is a safe response because it doesn't mean much. And so from a standpoint, and so again, if you're just trying to say that again that you feel you have a good property even though you don't have a written offer yet, again you've had you have showings and you have activity, and if that's true, I think that's a fine thing to say.
Here's a question: can you use a clause like quotes? My client will pay $500 more than the higher offer up to a certain amount.
That's an escalation clause. And so again, that gets into all those problems that what that can mean and how that could be in a situation to harm a buyer, consumer client from that standpoint. What constitutes an offer, what makes it a valid offer, all those kind of things that you're escalating against. And so there's a lot of pitfalls out there.
Okay. Here's some more questions. Do we need to say final versus highest?
As far as when you're talking about a final offer?
Yes.
Okay, so this is my highest offer, is my our final offer. It really doesn't matter from that standpoint because we don't move from offer to contract until we have in our situation, our transactions, we have this offer acceptance without changes in delivery in writing. And so until we have that, how we frame that we want your highest and best offers, your final offers or whatever, I don't think that really matters as long as it's clear, because what you're trying as a listing agent, when you're giving those instructions, if you will, you just want to make it clear to everybody of what's going on there.
This is just a response. So happy to know that we can ask terms of other offers, always get rude responses, so thanks. Next is, would we use the form in a single offer situation if we want to be able to leave the seller open to possible second or third offers?
Yeah, I think that could be a scenario too. From a standpoint, that would present a scenario where you were rejecting the offer at hand and inviting them to make another offer. And so there would be nothing to withdraw on your part as a seller. And if if other offers came in, you wouldn't have to worry about the timing of acceptance and delivery on that scenario. And so if you really wanted to leave that open-ended as to terms, you could simply reject it with that form and then try to invite them to submit another offer, but that would allow you to have timing to get other offers as well.
And let's see, if you as the listing agent and countering an offer, but another offer comes in, can the seller accept the other offer if the first offer has not been executed?
Correct. You can actually, it doesn't even matter if it was executed. If it hasn't been communicated, constituting delivery that it's been executed, then you can, and what you should do is immediately withdraw your counter offer and accept the other offer.
Okay. In regards to the question of, quote, final offer, does this limit changes due to repairs?
No, from the standpoint, because if you have again, that's not going to affect anything in paragraph 7 or paragraph 23. And so if you have a right to inspect the property and you have the leverage of the option period and the right to terminate there to negotiate that's not going to have any bearing on that scenario.
Okay. What constitutes a final /signed /agreed contract? Delivery of signed paperwork or delivery or proof of earnest money OP funds?
So the only thing that is again, you have to have the offer. You have to have, whether it be multiple counter offers or not, you have to have offer acceptance in writing without any changes and delivery of that acceptance. And that can simply be a communication that unequivocal acceptance has been accomplished. It's better to send the forms. It's better to send that in writing to constitute delivery. But simply, if it pushed, a simple phone call saying, my clients have accepted your terms unequivocally in writing, that's done. That's when the contract comes in place.
Okay.
And so the positive earnest money is not part of what creates the contract.
Okay. Here's some questions. These are more for me, I think. Will the forms be emailed? And if you have not already received the forms, anyone that signed up after probably about 9:50 this morning, I will email them later today, right after this meeting actually. Please forward a copy of the recording. It's so good. I want to listen to JC a couple more times to make sure I got everything. Thank you, April Edwards. Jill said, how do we get a recording? I'll send it out to every person on this call. And then another question, putting a deadline in an email when sending an offer like, whoops, quote, buyers kindly ask for a response by 5 p.m. tomorrow. Is that enough for a buyer to be protected and no longer attach the offer if after designated time?
No, I think you should. And this comes up a lot when we have a non-response. I think we should always withdraw offers from the standpoint. Now, if we're trying to get a response out of a seller, now one thing we need to remember in a strong seller's market, having deadlines from buyers is not going to scare them very much. But I'd rather see that if our buyer's looking for a response in a certain timeline, making a request in the email is preferred. I see this written into the contract sometimes, that this offer is automatically withdrawn if not accepted without changes by so-and-so. What I hate about that is that many times we say 5 p.m. on Tuesday and we get it negotiated at 10 p.m. on Tuesday. And guess what provision never comes out of the contract? That provision. And guess what happened? The offer was withdrawn before it was accepted. We go along 2 weeks and somebody's trying to enforce the contract and no contract exists.
Wow.
And so I do not like that being incorporated into the contract. I think it's fine into an email from that standpoint, but I think it is good. I would not just rely on that. If we were not going to negotiate any further, I would send a communication that any offers from my client have been withdrawn.
Okay. Stacy, hi Stacy, says, thank you so much, JC Johnson, as you are always very informative. And thank you, Greg and Old Republic, for an outstanding classes. So thanks, Stacy. That's all the questions we have right now. So
very good. Well, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, JC. More thank yous from Johanna. This is great. Thank you. So JC, would you like to summarize and I will finish?
Yeah, I think the takeaways here is that we need to be ready, willing, and able to explain multiple offers in this format to our buyers and sellers. We cannot assume that our buyers and sellers understand this process, because they don't. Many of your colleagues don't understand this process as well as they should. We need to know that the sellers and how to handle multiple offers, that we have those 3 distinct broad formats on how to handle those, and those need to be the seller's decisions. Well, and again, at the presence of multiple offers, what the terms may be of those offers, if that information is going to be made available to us, and then again, how the seller is going to approach multiple offers, whether we're going to have a second opportunity to increase, or they're just going to pick one, or how that's going to work. As much information as we can be gleaned out of that. And then just remember that we do have that one association form that's available to us that may be able to help us, especially if we're doing the kind of highest and best format from that standpoint.
Thank you again, JC. Always good seeing you. Thanks for your class. Want to invite everyone. JC is going to be doing another class next Wednesday from 10 to noon about commercial real estate. You don't want to miss that as well. You're going to receive an invite after this. And if you have any questions, please feel free to email or reach out to your Old Republic rep, or I think everyone has my email address as well. But thank y'all for your time and have a great day.